At SparkCognition, Vijay is part of the team that is trying to solve the world's most challenging problems by using artificial intelligence. As the Chief Business Officer, Vijay brings his experience in engineering, technology, research, and investing to catapulting SparkCognition to new and exciting industries and innovations. In this episode, Vijay and Ian discuss everything from how and why to invest and the exciting projects SparkCognition is working on, including autonomous everything from planes to powerplants and more. This podcast is sponsored by the Lightning Platform by Salesforce. Salesforce just introduced the Lightning Platform Mobile, the low-code mobile app development platform that empowers anyone to easily build, publish, and manage AI-powered mobile apps for employees and for customers. Find out more at salesforce.com/buildmobileapps.
Welcome to another episode of IT Visionaries. I'm Ian Faison, Chief Content Officer here at Mission.org. And on the other line, Vijay, what's going on?
Nothing much. How are you, Ian?
You know, it's a brilliant day here with no technical difficulties at all, as we tend to have on a very technical podcast. Yeah, we're excited to chat with you today. And I think it's going to be, a little bit different from some of the other interviews that we've done because you are a Chief Business Officer. Kind of explain what your role is and your responsibilities at SparkCognition.
Yeah, sure, Ian. And as a Chief Business Officer, my role primarily focuses on the business development, go-to-market, partnership, strategy. We're in the midst of a fundraise, so there's a lot focus on any sort of funding events. And then overall, one of the other things that I'm sort of helping the sales team is to make sure that we have our processes in place in terms of delivering our bookings and revenue as a company.
And kind of explain what you're working on at SparkCognition. We have a lot of focus on AI here, at IT Visionaries, and how intelligence, artificial intelligence, synthetic intelligence, and a lot of other types of machine learning and what this future kind of looks like. What is SparkCognition working on?
Yeah, so SparkCognition is one of the leading artificial intelligence companies in the world, offering solutions to solving some very, very hard problems in the world. We believe we are the leading provider of solutions in the industrial sector. We're solving problems in the oil and gas sector, in the power generation sector, separately in the aerospace sector and telco sector. So we view ourselves as a platform AI company with one of the deepest tech and foundational algorithms where we can stand up solutions in various different verticals very quickly. So as an example, we're offering some predictive maintenance solutions in the industrial sector. We've done a big partnership with Boeing that would love to talk a little more about, where we're trying to build the future of the operating system for autonomous flying vehicles. Believe it or not, that's kind of crazy when you hear that. But we believe that in the next decade or so, we're going to have autonomous drones ferrying passengers, ferrying cargoes, ferrying medicine in some scenarios. And how do these vehicles traverse from point A to point B autonomously without crashing into each other? How do you manage the flight control and the air traffic control, if you may, use another sort of analogy? So we're working on various different big problems, and some of them that I mentioned are a few off the top of my head.
It's really interesting. And I think, one of the reasons why we're so excited to talk to you today is that, you're still a pretty early stage company. And I think a lot of the bigger organizations that are out there that are working on how to look at leveraging drone technology or looking at things like autonomous power plants or flying cars and some of the aerospace stuff, a lot of those companies are the actual business units within those companies. It's not someone necessarily looking to how does someone augment that with artificial intelligence. I think what's interesting in our conversation before the episode is about how you all believe AI is going to be in everything. And so therefore being a platform for AI is sets you up for the future. Can you talk about like just an overview of like how you believe that that's going to be the case?
Yeah, no, and that's a very good question. So, this could be an interesting test, and maybe we're recording this conversation, so we'll have this timestamp. But I'm predicting the next 5 to 10 years, we're not even going to talk about AI. AI will find its way and is finding its way in sort of the fabric of corporations and companies and the way we operate. Imagine this, right? Even like a decade ago, things that we're doing on our smartphone were not even imaginable, right? With the advent of the iPhone and with the next generation sort of wireless technologies, companies like Uber and companies like Facebook and Dropbox and all these companies, the web skill companies were built, on top of these foundational sort of technologies, right? Be it the 4G in the wireless sector and the cloud, as well as the innovation of the hardware on the mobile side. So now we're at this stage where we believe artificial intelligence has come to a sort of a tipping point in terms of adoption because if you think about even a handset, there's a lot of AI that's in your handset in terms of image recognition, speech
Yeah,
recognition.
absolutely.
And so these things are coming to, very easily coming, and they've sort of become almost like table stakes. You don't look at Siri or Amazon and think, hey, I have artificial intelligence in my home. It's just that you start talking to Siri. I have two little boys. One of their best pastimes is they ask silly questions. We have an Amazon Alexa device in our home, and all they do is ask silly questions, interact with Alexa and all that. So we're seeing that in the consumer side. We are now getting to see that in scale on the enterprise side. So examples like you mentioned, autonomous vehicles, you talked about autonomous power plants. We talked about the operating system for the future of autonomous flying vehicles. You talk about cybersecurity. You talk about automated model building. These technologies are coming and they're sort of permeating themselves in our day-to-day lives on the consumer side as well as the enterprise side. And so I'll give you simple examples. We're working with, as I said, Boeing on the operating system for autonomous vehicles. We're working with a large power generation company, Mitsubishi Hitachi Power Systems, for building autonomous power plant. What would that mean? It doesn't mean that the power plant is going to run all by itself. What it means is all of a sudden you have artificial intelligence doing a lot of things that humans do, but will augment the sort of the capabilities of the human being. If a human being is managing one plant 24/7, that human being should be able to manage two or three plants. So the efficiency of how you generate power will fundamentally change, right, from a safety perspective and from a go-to-market perspective. So these are some examples of how, and that's why we believe the deep foundational technologies, the deep foundational algorithms, our capability to stand up, sort of use cases very quickly based on our fundamental foundation of patents, algorithms, and core technology will give us an edge compared to our competitors.
What do you think those type of projects and the type of influence that you're going to have, are you inventing technology? Are you working with existing technology to leverage what they're doing? Like what's the, and I know you can't say like too much about anything proprietary, but how is that kind of a blend of what you're making and leveraging for those, for your customers?
Right. And that's a great question, Ian. So it's a mix of both. Right. So we have close to, I think, in total, 33 to 35, granted and pending patents. We believe we have some foundational invention in the areas of genetic neuroevolutionary algorithms, automated model building. We're doing a lot of work around transfer learning and reinforcement learning that are cutting edge, which I think our engineers and our data scientists are filing patents. So these are inventions, right? But then, one of the things that artificial intelligence companies sort of struggle with is, if you don't package this technology in a consumable format, which can demonstrate, an ROI for an enterprise, then they're not going to use it. It doesn't matter how great the technology is and if it's artificial intelligence or not. So what we do is, as an example, I was mentioning the oil and gas sector. predictive maintenance has been in the oil and gas sector for a long, long time. And what we have done is we've taken the predictive maintenance concept to the next level, where we are introducing artificial intelligence to monitor not only assets like combustion turbines and pumps and electrical systems and business processes, but we've taken it to the next level where we're making that we're essentially using our technology and our software to monitor an entire platform. So we just recently announced, put out a press release that we've done a large deal with Aker BP. This is a Norwegian oil and gas company. And what we're doing with them is essentially going to be using artificial intelligence, monitoring an entire offshore drilling platform. They're generally around 60 to 70 critical assets that are streaming data in real time, and they're being captured in the cloud. And what we're doing is now applying our artificial intelligence algorithms at the edge, where the platform, the AI is learning from all this data in real time and is detecting behavioral anomalies so that you can catch something where a human being would probably not be able to catch. So it's a mix and match of, I would say, well-known industry verticals. Predictive maintenance has been around for, I would say, 100 years, right? Flowserve is a pump manufacturer, and they're, I think, a 200-year-old company, and I'm sure they were doing some sort of predictive maintenance, be it a manual or be it some software as technology evolved. But now we're taking that very established sort of vertical use cases of technology and applying artificial intelligence and cutting edge algorithms to that and taking that to the next level.
So you have some pretty interesting investors. And I know you can't go too much into kind of the fundraising aspects of this, but some of the companies that have invested in previous rounds, I think are super fascinating as it comes to companies that are investing in AI. And as it's such an important topic right now, and it's at its earliest stages, why do you think those companies are excited? And if you can share some of those companies that are investing.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I've been on sort of the both sides of the equation. If you look at our previous round, which was a Series B round, we raised $52.5 million in the Series B round. And the round actually was led by Verizon Ventures, where I used to work at Verizon Ventures prior to becoming Chief Business Officer of SparkCognition. I actually led the round for SparkCognition. I worked with Boeing and State Street, and we built the syndicate together and invested in SparkCognition collectively. And I think the rationale behind that investment from a Verizon perspective, a Boeing perspective, a State Street perspective, imagine all these three companies, the largest aviation company in the world, the largest telco in the world, and one of the largest custodian banks in the world. State Street, I think, is, if not the biggest, but one of the top two, right? All of them came to invest in SparkCognition with the vision of seeing some of these technologies being commercialized and the ability of these large companies for adopting new disruptive technologies to improve their efficiency, improve their innovation, right? And in some cases, it's not disruptive; it's sort of augments what people are doing at the company right now. So the common theme when I was on the other side in terms of cutting checks was, hey, how can we find one of the most sort of innovative companies where we can invest dollars into an innovative company, help the company grow, and adopt the technology where we could potentially get sort of a disruptive edge versus our competition. So Verizon, when I was at Verizon Ventures, we were constantly looking to push the envelope of innovation inside and outside where we could potentially work with a company like SparkCognition. The same thing happened with Boeing. If you talk to Steve Norland, who is our chairman and the head of Horizon X, his rationale for investing in SparkCognition was, can I take the technology that Spark is building and can I take this into Boeing and sort of accelerate, catalyze the innovation process using artificial intelligence?
That's really interesting. And I want to go a little bit more into your background with Verizon Ventures in a second. Another thing, and I don't know if you can talk about this at all, one of your investors is also John Chambers, right? The former longtime CEO of Cisco.
Yes, absolutely. And I was just telling Hillary that as we were working through the technical issues on the technical podcast.
That's
Was
exactly
that
right. Yeah.
John Chambers was actually in our office right now, and I think he's leaving in a couple of minutes. He spent the whole day with us. He came in last night. He's an investor. He was an investor in the Series B round through his family office and venture fund called JC2. And since then, he's been a big champion, big supporter, big advisor. And so we had our bi-monthly all hands meeting, and John was kind enough to fly out from California, spend time with us with the management team, as well as host the all hands meeting. So and what he brings to the table is he's one of these amazing leaders who has been there, done that, seen every single movie you can think of on planet Earth when it comes to the enterprise market. And what we did with him today, since the morning, was walk him through our pipeline, walk him through our sales process, walk him through our defense business, walk him through, as a chief business officer, I spent some time with him talking about deals and our strategy and get his sort of pulse on are we on the right track or not. We also spent a lot of time with him yesterday at dinner talking about culture. One of the, I think, key takeaways of working with John was how important it is for us to sort of define what our culture is. And there's no right or wrong answer to it, but the importance of institutionalizing the culture in the fabric of the company so that we know who we are, we know who we're not, and how we hire people as we grow the company to the next level. We hired the right talent that fits our culture. So that was a very sort of big eye opener for me personally in terms of listening to John at the all hands meeting, as well as at dinner and our interaction with him today during the daytime.
Yeah, and the reason why I bring it up, I mean, I think it's super interesting because there's a lot of companies out there that I think feel, especially bigger companies, that feel at times like they don't have, the support, like a lot of, IT leaders, CIOs or CTOs or whoever who might not have the ear of their CEO all the time. And to see someone like John who's investing in, multiple companies about drone technology and about AI and things like that, and seeing him so invested in specifically in SparkCognition, I think is an interesting look into the ecosystem right now and where it's at in this kind of early stage. When you were investing with Verizon, how did you go about looking? Well, actually, let me take a step back. We have a lot of obviously listeners who are IT leaders, who are senior IT leaders that are looking for innovation. So how did you look for innovation when you were at Verizon? And what are some of those takeaways that you think IT leaders could use to look at innovation?
Yeah, so if you look at many of the large companies, there's multiple vehicles of innovation. A few of them would be like, as an example, many of the companies have a chief digital officer. Many of the companies have a chief innovation officer. And what these organizations do is they look to push the envelope of innovation, right? So you look at your business, you look at what your core business is, and you're constantly the sort of the corp dev strategy group is constantly looking to see what is it that we can do to increase the pie, increase the revenue stream, accelerate the growth of core business and the peripheral businesses. And these innovation arms and innovation, leadership within the companies, assist in that sort of iterative process of what should we build, what should we outsource, build, buy, or partner. So that's one sort of vehicle, right? Another very powerful vehicle that we're seeing emerge in corporate America right now, and it's sort of a big resurgence, is the venture arm. And I view the venture investment arm of a corporation as another vehicle for driving disruptive ideas, innovation, and new blood into the stream of the company in terms of how do you look at problems? Are there any new cutting edge technologies that could potentially accelerate or even redefine what we're doing as a company? So at Verizon Ventures, one of the things I was doing was, we're sourcing, we had a corporate venture arm, and I was one of the lead investment professionals there. And I was very focused on next generation networking, artificial intelligence, blockchain, and some other thematic ideas. And what I would do is constantly, travel to the West Coast, obviously meet with startups. We had a Verizon Venture Day where we would invite companies to come and pitch in front of our executive team in terms of new ideas, new business models. And then more importantly, as an investment professional, you're constantly looking at these big themes. So in the case of artificial intelligence, we were very focused on what are the themes that are going to potentially impact Verizon in the near term and the longer term. And so you sort of invest with these ideas and find companies like SparkCognition or other companies that, there's a company called Versa that was doing SD-WAN, software-defined wide area networking. We're one of the early investors in Versa too. So these are some ideas where you just deploy capital, work closely with the company, and then help the company bring that technology within Verizon, as an example. So this is sort of some of the examples I gave you as to, sort of vehicles of innovation in a large company.
Did you work with a lot of CTOs and CIOs in that kind of process? Like, I'm curious to see how much the chief technologist for these companies were involved were in that room. Like, who are the people who, had a seat at the table in those type of conversations? Who are the people that you were talking to that were making decisions on that stuff?
Yeah, so I could sort of recall the process we have followed at Verizon. I think it's very similar at other large corporate venture capital firms. Because generally you have the CTO of the company who is a part of your investment committee. If you don't have a CTO, most technology companies or technology providers have a CTO or chief innovation officer. So that is one of the very important sort of persons at the table who are making this, this type of a decision. And that was, sort of on the top-down level. You talk about the chief technology officer. From the bottom-up level, when you're investing in companies, what the process at Verizon was, how would you go to the product team or the services team that is relevant to what you're investing in, and get feedback from them as to what they think about this technology or this trend. Is this of interest to them or not? And if so, sort of evangelize the disruption process or the co-innovation process, so to speak. The best companies are companies who will not completely always listen to their product teams and would go and invest in companies that could potentially even compete with their product teams, right? In which case, you're making a sort of a hedge, sort of a bet that, if this startup is going to disrupt my core business, then I'm ahead of the curve and I can acquire this company and sort of augment my core business or my product team, right? But these are sort of the kinds of people that we would very closely interact with.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And then so when you're doing that, do you have the conversation, with the acquiring company, with that person's, CTO or CIO, the acquiring, group? How involved were you in kind of that handoff? Because I know that's one of the things, we talked to Alvina Antar, I think it was episode 2, about this because she used to work at Dell. And she said that one of the huge challenges when they would acquire companies was, that 12 to 18 month roadmap of how do we bring this technology into the fold. Did you kind of see any best practices there, or any I guess worst practices that you saw from like bringing in companies and assimilating them into the overall company? And it doesn't need to be just Verizon.
Right.
Anything that you saw just kind of.
Yeah. And I think it's a very good question, actually. I'm just going to quote what John Chambers mentioned. One of the key highlights of John Chambers and his long tenure at Cisco and the successful long tenure at Cisco was he executed on 181 acquisitions. And in many cases, the acquisitions, he mentioned today at the all hands meeting that one of the companies they acquired for $92 million is generating $10 billion in revenue right now for Cisco. I don't think there's another company of that type that you can find that has had a successful sort of template. And one of the things he mentioned at the meeting was they figured out what was the formula that worked for them, right? They had less than 4% churn when it came to a company that was acquired and being integrated into Cisco, a 4% churn of these new employees leaving Cisco and moving on versus the industry of as high as 20% churn, right? So something worked there. And one of the things he mentioned was, when they acquired companies that were a perfect fit for them. They did a lot of due diligence on the culture and the core competencies of the team, the product market fit part. And I think it also goes back to John's sort of leadership in managing these acquisitions and the integration of these acquisitions in a company. 90% of corporate acquisitions fail. And we've seen this movie over and over again where companies come either merge or they make large acquisitions, and 5-10 years later they sort of write it off or say the synergies didn't work out, right? That is the norm. But I would say from a best practice perspective, and John was mentioning this, that the acquisition process at Cisco is now taught in Harvard Business School as well as the Stanford Business School as sort of case studies of what they did and how did they templatize that process.
Wow, that's really interesting. Do you find that as someone who's been an entrepreneur, started your own company, been an investor, and now been an operator, which one's the easiest? Which one's the hardest? Or do they have challenges? I'll give you an out there.
It's the easiest one. The easiest one is it depends. It depends upon what your psychological profile is, right? It's very easy to cut checks. It also could be very painful to cut a check, right? So I would say if you're to rank order what is the toughest to what is the easiest, I would say the life of an entrepreneur or being an entrepreneur is the toughest on planet Earth, right? Imagine 5 years ago when Amir started this company, all he had was a handful of people and a vision and a PowerPoint slide and a little bit of code. Fast forward, we're 226 employees and one of the fastest growing artificial intelligence companies in the world, right? So I've been an entrepreneur, I've been a venture capitalist, also now as an entrepreneur, I was also the operator, but now as a technology company, I'm in the operator role. I'll tell you the operator role is very, very hard. It's very hard because you're trying to balance the needs of the business. You're trying to solve problems in real time that are hard problems to solve. And you're also trying to build confidence of your investors and your employees and your leadership team, reinforcing the message that we're on the right track. John was mentioning today that there's a large number of startups die at that, going from 150 employees to, let's say, 500 employees to 5,000 employees. And one of the problems that when these companies face in terms of scaling the business is the culture. If they don't execute on the culture side, companies sort of start disintegrating from the inside, right? But I would say, to answer your question, being a venture capitalist it's a very hard job in terms of the metrics you're judged at. I think the hardest, because there's no black and white there. You either make money and you're a successful venture capitalist, or you are not.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very hard. It was very easy to cut a check. It's very hard. It's probably the hardest to get judged because there's no scope for interpretation. And then on the other spectrum, as an operator, it's very hard on a day-to-day basis in terms of building the business and going to market and selling products and solutions. And it's just generally very hard to. But when you get to a certain scale, all of a sudden the virtuous cycle of, hey, you're big enough, it looks like you have some big customers, so I'm going to trust you. It goes from the chicken and egg problem as to who is going to take a bet with you, and the Jeffrey Moore's crossing the chasm, the early adopters versus the late adopters. As an operator, that's sort of the battle you sort of fight.
All right, let's get into the lightning round. These are fast and easy questions you have never seen before, but it'll be fast and easy, not unlike the Lightning platform by our friends at Salesforce. The Lightning platform is a leading cloud platform that makes building AI-powered apps faster and easier. AI-powered apps, there you go. Right in the name, Salesforce building apps is everyone's business. Fast and easy, like these questions. Let's get into it. Number 1, what app are you using on your phone that is the most fun?
Google Maps.
Google Maps is the most fun. What are you, like, zooming out super far and like looking at stuff, or just getting you from A to B?
I don't, I drive a lot and I'm new to Austin. So, so that's an app that's a lifesaver.
Oh, speaking of that, we're going to be in Austin for Serious Decisions in May. Maybe we'll have to swing by HQ.
Absolutely. Open invitation.
All right. What's your favorite use of AI or chatbots that you've seen out in the wild? So nothing SparkCognition related.
I think there is, I don't remember the name of the app per se, but there's an app that is being used by people as an automated sort of admin. It will set up, I don't remember the name of the app. I'm sorry, I'm obviously not using it, but that was a very interesting concept where you can schedule your calendar using AI.
Yeah, that's great. Do you have a favorite team, sports or otherwise?
I should be careful what I say here because, obviously now we're in Texas. We love anything Texas, right? I used to watch a lot of cricket when I was in India, and I think cricket is still a lot of interest to me. And, the Indian cricket team is definitely a favorite team.
What about a favorite book or podcast that you've read or listened to recently?
I would say the latest book I've read was Bad Blood. And I think that was one of the most fascinating books I've read in the last maybe 5-7 years. I couldn't put the book down when I opened and started reading it. So I would rate that as my top book right now.
What do you do for fun?
What I do for fun, I'd like to spend a lot of time with my kids. I have a 7-year-old and a soon-to-be 4-year-old. I think the most amount of fun I have is when I go back home and I spend time with them. That's the best part of my day. That's what I do for fun.
Last question of the lightning round. What is your best advice for a first-time C-level executive?
Very good question. I think the first-time C-level executive would be to, when you enter into that role, I think the stakes are completely at a different level altogether. And you are the leader of the company and everybody looks up to you. And so it's very important to understand that the stress and sort of the responsibilities come with the territory. And what I would recommend first-time C-levels would be, take a deep breath, go a day at a time. Don't let stress get to you, and keep a positive attitude because positivity is something that trickles down in the culture of a company, and individuals impact profile and the mindset of a company. So as a C-level, what would be very important is how do you sort of communicate with your peers as well as the general public, because everything you say and everything you do has an impact on the extended workforce.
I love it. That is it for the lightning round. We love Salesforce. You will too. Go to salesforce.com/build mobile apps to learn more about the Lightning platform and how you can build AI-powered apps faster and easier. Vijay, anything else? Anything we missed?
No, Ian, thank you for your time. I look forward to hosting you in Austin at our headquarters when you're here, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, we're just really excited to have you on, and we'll be following along to see what's going on with SparkCognition. This is really exciting stuff, and obviously AI is at the forefront of what everybody's thinking about these days. So I'm sure we will have you back on the pod soon.
Thank you again to our friends at Salesforce. IT Visionaries is brought to you by the Lightning Platform by Salesforce. Salesforce just introduced the Lightning Platform Mobile, the low-code mobile app development platform that empowers anyone to easily build, publish, and manage AI-powered mobile apps for employees and for customers. Find out more at salesforce.com/buildmobileapps.